friends, Michelle here at the intersection of pedagogy and technology. And today I want to talk about cyberbullying, specifically full-grown adults cyberbullying a teenager. So let's dive into this. On the 22nd of August in the United States, I'm not American, the Democratic National Convention was taking place in Chicago, and the vice presidential pick for the Democrat Party gave his speech. And during this speech, viewers witnessed one of the most honest, most raw, most powerful displays of love that a human can potentially show. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch the video. I'm going to take it from the feed from the Midas Touch Network. They don't tend to have talking heads over top of what's taking place. So we're going to watch just a little wee segment of the speech, and we're going to watch the reaction of a 17-year-old boy. So the young man's name is Gus Walz, and on the 6th of August, so literally just over 2 weeks before this speech, his father was named as the vice presidential pick for Kamala Harris, who is running for the Democrat Party for President of the United States. On August 22nd, his dad spoke at this convention, and there's a moment where his dad, Tim Walz, called out his family, his wife, his daughter, and his son, and said how much he loves them and how they are his life and his everything. And his son was moved by this particular moment, and he stood up pointing with the most pride you'll ever see a child show for a parent, saying, "That's my dad." So let's watch the clip.
Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in.
Okay, so we've seen that. We've seen a 17-year-old kid overcome with emotion because he's so proud of his dad. What more could a parent want? When do we get to see a child showing that kind of response to a parent? As teachers, we see it all the time with parents at award shows and sports banquets feeling just that enormous sense of pride over their children. But this one was different. This one was a teenager who was just so moved by what's happening in his family. He's hardly had any time to adjust to this. A month before, his dad was the governor of Minnesota. That was their life. Suddenly, his dad is the vice presidential elect. They're at a national convention, and things are taking on a life of their own. And this young man, who is clearly secure enough in his family, secure enough in himself, allowed himself to be overcome by the moment. And this is where, unfortunately, what I would have considered to be just a beautifully happy story, this is where it ends. Because this is the point where adults on the internet begin to cyberbully a 17-year-old kid. I'm not wanting this video to be political. That's not my point at all. My point actually is cyberbullying. I have spent years, decades, talking to kids about cyberbullying, talking about what it means to cyberbully, talking about the reality of the people who are on the receiving end of it, what it's like for them. I went so far as to allow myself to go viral as a classroom lesson, and perhaps someday I'll film a video about it. It's over 10 years ago, and it's still not something I particularly like to talk about because it's a rough ride. And adults on the internet just did that to a 17-year-old kid whose only crime, as far as I can see, is to love and admire his dad. And then an onslaught of aggressive, awful cyberbullying was unleashed on this kid. And I've hesitated to make this video. I thought about it for several days before deciding that I need to say something about this. As teachers, we are trying to teach our kids how to be kind online, how to use social media effectively and appropriately, how to have empathy for the person who's on the other side of that screen. We've all heard of keyboard warriors. We know how emboldened the world becomes when it's behind a keyboard. Do we even see the human being? Do we see the kid behind that? The human brain, it's not done developing until we're 25 years old. This is still a kid. Yes, he's probably going to graduate from school next year. I'm basing that on the fact that I've read that he's 17. Typically 18 is grade 12. So I'm guessing that we've got a kid going into grade 12 here who is now on the receiving end of an onslaught of vitriol, aggression, hate, criticism. I can't imagine what he's going through right now. Well, actually I can, because I've been there and it sucked. And so for him, my heart goes out to him. The internet can be a horribly cruel place. We all know from going on social media that you can go into any particular Facebook group or Instagram thread, and from the moment of the first disagreement between two people, I don't know, what is it usually, 2 or 3 comments before we're into full-on name calling? In a certain way that is the blind leading the blind. And I used to talk to the kids in my class about this, about the fact that we weren't raised with this kind of connectivity. We weren't raised with every moment of important events being filmed from multiple angles and posted to the internet, oftentimes without consent. It's a whole new world, and even though our kids are living in it, I'm not convinced that they're completely comfortable in it, and I'm certainly not convinced that everything is good. And I think it falls to us as adults to make good choices, especially when we are dealing with children. Whether we grew up with these technologies or not, we are the role models. And we all make mistakes. No problem, I get it. But this isn't a mistake. And I've hesitated about whether I should post any of this, whether I should include screenshots of some of the things that people have said. That's been my biggest concern in this, is if I talk about this, am I making it worse for a young man who didn't deserve any of this? And in the course of a few conversations over the last few days, I've come to conclude that most adults are unaware of how awful this has been for this young man, how cruel adults can be, how thoughtless, how careless, how motivated to one end that they can be, that they don't even see the kid between them and their apparent political goal on the other side, whatever that be. But I think as teachers, it gives us an illustrative example, not just of how cyberbullying can unfold, but of the fact that adults are guilty too. This isn't just a kid problem. Grown-ups do this too. And how are we supposed to teach children that cyberbullying isn't okay when adults are doing it to children? I don't have the answers, but I would certainly love to have some conversation in the comments about this. How can we teach our kids, do as I say, not as I do? We know that doesn't work. I can use words like disgraceful, disappointing, aggressive, insane, ugly. They're all overused words. We hear them thrown around all the time. At the end of it, though, I think I'm just sad. I'm sad that as adults, there are some out there who are not choosing to do better than this. And maybe making money is the end goal. That's never really been my end goal. If you've watched much of my channel, you'll note that I'm not asking for likes or subscribes. I don't want to go viral. I've been there, I've done that. But I do want to use my channel to talk about education, to talk about teaching with technologies. And this flies in the face of what I've spent a career trying to do, trying to teach our kids, our future adults. At the end of the day, my teacher heart goes out to Gus Walz and his family, because this wasn't fair. They didn't ask for this. He didn't ask for this. He's just a kid whose dad has had something very unexpected come into their lives in the last few weeks. And by God, that kid's proud of his dad. And I hope for all of you out there, I hope your children feel about you the way Gus Walz feels about his dad. Because that's the hallmark of a good parent. That's the hallmark of an attached child. The other thing I've seen floating around in the media, and I just want to put a little clarity on this, according to media, and this appears to be fact, Gus Walz has a nonverbal learning disorder. You would not believe the number of videos I've viewed that have stated that Gus Walz is nonverbal. That's not what a nonverbal learning disability is. A nonverbal learning disability impacts things that have nothing to do with verbal learning. It impacts spatial understanding. It can impact one's ability to write and write neatly, hand control, fine motor control. Those are nonverbal learning disabilities. Gus Walz is not nonverbal. And people need to do a quick look up on some of these things before they start making these statements. Is it neurodiversity? Absolutely. Nonverbal learning disabilities are neurodiversity. He also apparently has ADHD. Super common. Tons of kids have ADHD. So do tons of grown-ups. You'd be surprised how many people my age are now getting the diagnosis of ADHD because we didn't know enough about it when we were young. So a shout out to the community of neurodiversity. Absolutely. Gus Walz is one of us. Our neurodiversity is everywhere. There's no stigma to it. But we need to have our facts straight. Gus Walz has a nonverbal learning disability. That doesn't make him nonverbal. Not the same thing. It takes a community, folks. It takes a community to raise a child. And when we have parts of the community who are adults and who should know better, who are engaging in this type of vitriolic, disgusting behavior towards a child, our children need us more than ever. They need us to support them. They need us to listen to them, and they need us to be there to give them all of the positive reinforcement, because for every one nasty word that comes their way, it takes many, many, many more kind words to overwrite that or to overthrow that. So there's been damage done. Make no mistake. Nobody is impervious to this kind of thing. Nobody can get through this without it impacting them on some level. So to the Walz family, I would first say I'm so sorry that this happened to you. This wasn't what you were thinking about when you accepted the nomination, when you went to speak at the National Convention. You are both teachers. And so from one teacher to another, I see an amazing young man who loves his parents. I see attachment in your family that I wish every child who came through my classroom doors had. And I'm so sorry, Gus and Hope, because Hope, this will have impacted you too. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You didn't deserve this, but I hope that some learning can come from it. And I'm not going to say that that will make it okay. I'm not trying to put a silver lining on a storm cloud. What happened was unfair. But what happened was also one of the most beautiful and pure moments that I've ever been privileged to witness. So I say thank you for giving me the opportunity to see that that still exists in a world where all of the ugly can also exist.